Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to start by picturing two completely different scenes happening at, well, roughly the same time. We're going to put them up on a split screen in your mind.
Okay.
On the left, you've got a cricket stadium in Colombo. It's the T20 World Cup. You know, the bright lights, huge crowds, that high energy. And it's Pakistan versus India. I mean, that's the biggest, most intense rivalry in the entire sport.
It's the kind of event that basically stops the clock for millions of people.
Yep.
It's more than just a game. It's a whole cultural event.
Exactly. But now, look at the right side of that split screen. It's a totally different world. A dim, isolated prison cell. Adiela jail. And sitting there is a 73-year-old man.
Right.
This man used to be maybe the most famous person in that country. He was the hero who captained their cricket team to its greatest victory decades ago. But now he's in that cell, complaining that he's slowly going blind in his right eye.
It's a really striking juxtaposition, almost cinematic. And normally, you know, in news, we'd see those as two totally separate stories. One's in the sports section.
Yeah, front page if it's a big loss.
Right. And the other goes in the political section. You just flip the page between them.
But what if they aren't separate at all? What if that cricket match and that prison cell are actually telling the exact same story? That's the core question we're digging into today.
We're looking at a really fascinating and honestly a pretty heavy piece by the journalist Mayank Chaya. It's called Pakistan. A cricket defeat is merely a symptom of a deeper malaise.
And just to set the stage for you, this isn't going to be a sports recap. We're not breaking down bowling averages or anything like that.
No. Chaya's argument is that these huge headline events, the humiliating loss on the field and the tragedy in the prison cell, are actually symptoms of what he calls a single fountainhead of trouble.
A single fountainhead.
He's arguing that we're looking at a society that has never fully, and this is his word, coalesced as a nation state.
Never fully coalesced. Wow, that is a heavy phrase.
Yeah.
It feels like we're talking about something way bigger than just a bad week in the news.
We are.
It sounds like the country itself is still just a collection of parts instead of a single working machine.
That's it. We're looking at what Chaya calls existential dangers. When he says never fully coalesced, he means that the social contract, you know, the bond between the people and the state, it hasn't really solidified. So when you apply pressure, things don't just bend. They start to actually break apart.
So, okay, let's dive into these sorry twin spectacles, as the author puts it. First up, the cricket. Now, I love a good underdog story, but this wasn't that. This was Pakistan versus India, T20 World Cup in Colombo. For those of us who don't follow cricket that closely, how bad was this loss?
Oh, it was significant. They lost by 61 runs. In the world of T20 cricket, which is the super fast-paced version of the game,
Right.
a 61-run defeat is a hammering. It's not an, oh, we almost had it kind of thing. It's a collapse. But what Mayank Chaya points out in the article is that it wasn't just the score. It was the look of the defeat.
Right, and we have to talk about the psychology of that because the way he describes the players is just haunting. The author says there was a pall of defeat hanging on them permanently.
Permanently, not just disappointment, something heavier.
Exactly. There's this incredible line in the text. I have to read it. He says, it was almost as if the team members carried their own little versions of their native country in peril.
That is such a powerful metaphor. Carrying their own little versions of their native country. I mean, it implies the players aren't just athletes operating in some kind of bubble.
Yeah.
They're citizens, and they're carrying the weight of a broken system right onto the field with them. You can't focus on the ball when the ground beneath you feels unstable, you know? The author's suggesting that the whole national mood, that malaise, it just leaks right into the locker room.
And it wasn't just that they looked sad. The author mentions these risible asides. He describes this awkwardness, like whether players should shake hands or even look at each other. He says they looked at one another with suspicion.
And that suspicion is key. It reflects this deep lack of confidence, not just in their own skills, but in each other. And that just mirrors the society they come from. If you live in a system where trust has completely eroded, when institutions are failing, that paranoia, it travels with you.
Yeah, it creates this picture of a team that's defeated before the first ball is even bowled. Which brings us back to the other side of that split screen.
Yeah.
Because if anyone represents the intersection of cricket and the state of the nation, it is Imran Khan.
Absolutely. He is the bridge between these two worlds. He was the World Cup winning captain in 1992, the ultimate sports hero. Then he becomes prime minister, and now He's the prisoner.
And the details here are just rough. He's been incarcerated since August of 2023, but the specific report that came out the same week as the match was about his health. The source mentions he's practically going blind in his right eye.
Yes. He's 73 years old, and according to the reports, he'd been complaining about this loss of vision for 3 months.
3 months.
It just creates this very specific, very tragic image. You have a man who was once this global superstar, a hedonist, then the political leader of a nuclear-armed country,
Right.
and now he's just eroding away in a dark cell.
And Chaya connects these two events, the loss in Colombo and the loss of eyesight in prison, by calling them manifestations.
Oh.
He's saying this isn't just a coincidence, just bad luck happening at the same time.
Precisely. He writes that they're manifestations of a society long trapped in deeper and nearly incapacitating crises. The idea is that the dysfunction of the state is so potent, it's leaking out everywhere. It's affecting the reflexes of young athletes in Colombo, and it's affecting the medical care of a former prime minister in Adiala jail.
That is such a fascinating way to look at current events. Usually, you think of sports as an escape from politics, right? Like, ignore the economy, look at the scoreboard. But here, the author's saying you can't escape it.
You can't.
The scoreboard is the economy. The scoreboard is the politics.
And that leads us to how the public reacted. Because when the news about Khan's eyesight came out, it didn't just go unnoticed. The author notes that this news enraged his supporters in the PTI party, but it also angered just general citizens.
Why do you think that is? I mean, his partisans, sure, but why the general public?
Because it's an indicator of a society where the ruling elite is at odds with its people. That's the phrase Chaya uses. If the system can treat the most famous, most celebrated person in the country with such neglect, letting him go blind in prison, what hope does the average person have?
It creates a massive crisis of confidence.
The total crisis of confidence.
It's like the social contract is just completely shredded.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us right back to the pall of defeat on the cricket team. If you know your country treats its heroes like that, what exactly are you playing for?
Exactly. The motivation just evaporates. Chaya argues the country is in a far more serious crisis than a T20 defeat. The cricket match is just the most visible symptom, like the rash on the skin of a body that is fighting a much more serious systemic infection.
So let's talk about the infection.
Yeah.
Because the article asks, if these are the symptoms, what is the disease? And Chahaya, he does not hold back here. He lists this extraordinary convergence of destructive forces.
He really does. And it's important to see how he lists them because he shows how they're all piling up at once. It's not one thing going wrong, it's everything going wrong all at the same time.
Okay, so what's first?
First, he points to unending economic pauperization.
Pauperization.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped on that word when I was reading. That's a strong word. It's not just inflation or recession. It implies being made a pauper, being drained.
Exactly. It implies a structural decline into poverty, that the wealth of the nation is actively being eroded. When a population is facing that, they're in survival mode. They're not thinking about national pride. They're thinking about their next meal. And that just drains the national spirit.
Then he moves to foreign policy. He accuses the leaders of indulging in embarrassing ingratiation to the United States.
That is a harsh critique. Ingratiation. It basically means sucking up.
Right, begging for favor.
And he also calls it embarrassing. He's arguing that the leadership is trying to curry favor in a way that compromises the nation's dignity, its sovereignty. So you have a population getting poorer.
And a leadership that looks weak on the global stage.
It's a recipe for humiliation.
And then, maybe the strongest language is for the internal power dynamics. He talks about the military's absurd stranglehold over its civil society.
Absurd stranglehold. You know, usually when you read geopolitical analysis, the language is so diplomatic. You hear terms like civil-military imbalance or hybrid regime. But absurd stranglehold paints a very vivid picture of suffocation.
It does. It sounds like the life is being squeezed out of the civilian institutions.
And that is exactly Chaya's point. When you combine those three things, an economy that's draining away, a foreign policy of ingratiation, and a military suffocating civil society, you start to see why he says the society has never really fully coalesced as a nation-state.
I want to pause on that idea of coalescing. What does it actually mean for a nation to coalesce?
It means that all the different parts of the country, the people, the institutions, the land, have gelled into a unified whole. A functioning nation-state has a shared sense of purpose, a shared legitimacy. People agree to be governed because they believe in the whole project of the nation.
Right.
But if the military is strangling civil society and the economy is failing, those bonds break. The glue dries up, and the parts start to pull away from the center.
And speaking of parts pulling away,
Yeah.
this is where the article gets really interesting and honestly pretty scary. The author pivots from the cricket pitch and the prison cell to what he calls an existential danger. And he's not talking about sports anymore. He's talking about geography. He's talking about Balochistan.
This is a crucial part of his argument because while the cricket loss is symbolic and the economic crisis is structural, Balochistan is physical. It challenges the actual map of the country.
Yeah, let's look at the numbers here because they just blew my mind.
Mhm.
I think people often underestimate the scale of this.
Yeah.
The text says Balochistan represents 44% of the country's territory.
44%. Just let that sink in for a moment.
That's nearly half the landmass.
It's massive. Imagine if almost half of the United States just decided it didn't want to be part of the Union anymore. That's the scale of the territorial crisis we're talking about.
And population-wise, it's about 14.8 million people living there.
Right. And of those, 5.9 million are ethnic Baloch people. And the situation there is just dire. Chaya describes a violent Baloch subnationalism.
And this isn't a new problem, is it? The text mentions it's been going on for a long, long time.
He notes that the current insurgency is in its 20th year. 2 decades.
An entire generation.
An entire generation growing up in conflict. And the source says it's not getting better. It's showing no sign of abating. In fact, Chaya writes, if anything, it has become worse.